It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to be in this panel with my colleague Frank, as you mentioned, and Noam. It will be a pleasure to talk a little bit through here, and also thanks to the German and Israeli delegation, Mr. Kuhn and Mr. Una, for the good introduction on innovation, collaboration, and I would like to add here action, but because I think this is a very important piece here, but I come to this a little bit later. First, I think I was introduced, or I want to talk a little bit about how planes fly. And in the past, we thought there's air flowing around a body, and then we thought, it's magic. Somewhere in the past, we then discovered, there must be a combination out of thrust, drag, lift, and weight. So pure physics and probably a little bit of magic behind it to make aircraft fly. And then somehow we figured out, and since more than a century now, airplanes or planes are flying. So it's somehow also a proof of magic, I guess. And obviously we mastered not only to keep one plane in the air, we mastered it multiple times. So this is a good start, I think, for the developments ahead, because what we are doing right now and what we want to do in the future a little bit more is we want to explore this kind of magic a little bit further, because I think the physics are well understood at this point in time. And what do we see right now from also from a research, but also from a military perspective, is that we move from single platforms to join all domain, name it, be it operations, C2, communications, environment. Each profession has its own definition, its own wording for this. But what it means really is we see a general evolution towards highly integrated operations, connecting everything at every time simultaneously. This is not new, the idea. I think the idea was brought up roughly 5 years ago by the Americans. Other nations adopted it right now. In Europe, we see the Future Combat Air System, Tempest, and I think although the Israelis have similar approaches upcoming in the near future. The main goal is to speed up this observe, orient, decide, act, this OODA loop, as the military calls it, and to give us a little bit superior about our adversaries. But what this has to do with airplanes, basically, we have to move our planes from single platforms with limited data sharing capabilities, and I include here also the F-35, because all the fifth generations will not have enough data sharing capabilities to what the joint all-domain operations will require towards a sixth generation fighter concept, which is characterized. Yeah. I would like so, but I think my technology makes me a little bit hard. I cannot share my screen and put on my camera here. I'm very sorry for that. I will put it on after my talk if this is okay for you. I'm very sorry, but I think my face is not the most important here. I think people can live with it right now. So we have to move to sixth generation, which is characterized to highly networked and distributed task execution. What this then means in reality is we have manned motherships, unmanned system, and legacy system working together in so-called combat cloud operation. In very simple terms, and we hope that technology will get us there, and with a little bit of magic, we hope we can fix this. But then this morning, my daughter came to my room and said, that magic and unicorns are not real. Probably mermaids are, but we have a lot of issues to tackle there. Of course, technological, but I think we put a lot of effort, as far as introduced with this panel here, and research, development, and acquisition that will get us there on the technical side. But then I think we will face a big wall that is called bureaucracy, and we have to work with everything as certification, safety and health regulations airspace integration, air traffic management, just to name a few of them. And I think this is something we should not ignore, and this is where what initially told action comes into play here, where we have to act, and where we also start to act not only in Israel but in Germany as well. So since we cannot only focus on security, or in this case here cybersecurity, we also have to address airworthiness, air traffic management, just to name two. So the safety aspect, and safety and security are two sides of the same coin. They cannot work without each other. What do I mean with this is airworthiness, air traffic management. It's basically the avoidance of malfunction. I think this is for current system, this is well understood. Also for the legal frameworks are well worked. It's a deterministic process or procedure, so the root cause effects are well understood. It's a long process to work through, and it's even longer process to adapt to new regulations. And one basic rule we at least have to apply in Germany and then the European airspace and the whole is, if you want to use a civil airspace, you have to adapt to civil rules, even if the civil rules are probably not 100% designed to your system, but you have to adapt to those. In addition, then we see the cyber security issue upcoming. So the unlawful seizure of your aircraft, while the civil industry or the civil side of the industry, the use case there is the single aircraft at the moment with hundreds of passengers, which is somehow different to that what the militaries look into. But the basic problem is will be the same: the increasing complexity, the interdisciplinarity of the problems, the digitalization. We'll talk this days about mobility. So the whole supply chain is integrated, is also connected. So this will increase the vulnerability as well. And from our perspective, we have just started, and I'm happy that Frank and Noam will add to this later. But in the civil side, we have just started to address this issue, also with federal funding. So what we see basically is that we have it's mandatory to integrate military aircrafts into the civil airspace, but we have to integrate a class of military aircraft that is highly networked, has distributed and highly automated functions. This is which are not a use case for the civil aviation industry. So hence the military authorities are in the driver's seat to adopt, to propose new regulations that will us then enable to implement all the agile innovations that are proposed, that are discussed during this week and on other conferences as well. So how do we address this or parts of those issues in the German Aerospace Center? So basically, we said, okay, there is a need to go to zero trust approach. We have this for the safety operations anyway, and then for the cybersecurity operations as well. So because we have the need to continuously deliver the intended functions despite the adverse events, being it malfunctions, being it adverse events. On the one hand side, we do this with a close cooperation with the military and the civil authorities to work those regulations, to give them a very early heads up about the upcoming technologies. What does it mean for the airworthiness of airplanes, and that they can early adapt, talk with us. And I think this is a major role of research in the authorities. I do not see, I see industry here in a supporting role, but not in the driver's seat. And then we have, of course, a technical side of life. So when we say safety and security are one, and we have to work it together, then so we cannot independently work on it. So let's go we have to move from a regulation-based safety towards a monitoring risk approach, which means 3 parts. You need detection, hence you have to have a monitoring architecture, you have monitoring algorithms, you have monitoring modes. Second, you will need to respond. If you spot some things, we will have evaluation and mitigation strategies, countermeasure evaluation, and also some kind of decision making. And I think this will be the hot spot in the future when it comes to decision making. We have a lot of ethical discussions in Germany, which are good, but which also put the spot there that if you move towards a more automated, then you have to give more trust to the machines. And I think this is a long way to go, and which is probably not the same speed as technology development. And then you have the recovery mode. Okay, you have static redundancies, means you have a single or 2 engines on one platform, or you have dynamic redundancies, meaning you have multiple unmanned systems performing the same task. What happens if one fails? Can you still execute the task or safely operate your mission? You have on the air updates and self-recovery modes. Those are all within those technical solutions where you go for monitoring instead of rule-based or paper-based safety operations. Finally, when I discovered that mermaids are probably real, despite what my daughter said, and I look at the interdisciplinary research at DLR. So our research can build on a fast research infrastructure, going from traditional wind tunnels to high-power computing, ground-based simulators, and one of the latest tools we have is an in-flight simulation system. We can simulate all of those in a real environment, which then allows us a quick feedback loop, which also speeds up the development. And what we have to look into is the engineering of resilient AI, where the AI does not come from DLR, but we adapt those from startups and from industry. Look into those. How do they operate in highly complex environment? How do they operate in massively distributed systems? What is has their hierarchies or federal networks are sufficient? We have to look into robustness and monitoring. What can we do with the limited resources, especially on unmanned disposable machines, if we have a desire to do a lot with deep learning and machine learning, which requires a lot of computational power. What is required to go for real time, because we need the information now. And then, of course, we have a lot of known malfunctions, but we have even more unknown adverse events in the operating environment that we have to include in our considerations. Response and recovery, of course, we have to go beyond the single platform. You will hear today the system of system concept multiple times, which gives us new opportunities, but also new challenges in the future. We have operational margins. How can we operate in a civil environment? How can we operate in operational environment? And then we have, of course, a trust. So we cannot leave the man out of the loop. We have to consider it as long as former pilots procure aircrafts. We have also to consider former pilots or pilots as a stakeholder. And finally, of course, airworthiness will be, as I mentioned before, a main player to get all the good innovations, all the good technology into the air. Otherwise, it's stay on the ground. And all of this we want to achieve in good cooperations with our national MODs and authorities, with industry, of course, include them in our research programs, and also to enable then the technology transfer into real products. Since we are governmentally funded or funded by the MOD, all the collaboration has to go through the MOD. This is where we are handcuffed, but anyway, I think this is a workable way since decades.